Delaware is small enough to cross in a morning and varied enough to fill a week with wild places. For nature lovers, the state reads like a compact field guide to the mid-Atlantic coast. Barrier beaches and dune forests, tidal salt marshes that breathe twice a day, quiet bays where horseshoe crabs gather, and maritime woodlands shaped by wind and salt. This is a best-of route built around four flagship landscapes: Cape Henlopen, Bombay Hook, Delaware Seashore, and Fenwick Island, plus the connective tissue between them, the bays, inlets, and backroads that make Delaware's outdoors feel intimate and surprisingly diverse. Start at the northern end of the coast with Cape Henlopen State Park, where Delaware Bay meets the Atlantic in a shifting, sandy handshake. The Cape is a living landform. Currents and storms constantly rearrange its beaches and shoals, and that dynamism is part of the appeal. One day the surf line is clean and straight. After a nor'easter, it may be scalloped and littered with shells and seaweed wrack, the buffet line for shorebirds. Look closely at the dunes. American beach grass is doing quiet engineering work, trapping sand grain by grain and building the first line of defense against coastal erosion. Beyond the dunes, the park opens into maritime forest, gnarled pines and oaks shaped by salt spray, where you can walk from ocean glare into green shade in minutes. Cape Henlopen's history sits right on the surface. During World War II, this was part of the nation's coastal defense network. The remnants of Fort Miles are still here, concrete gun batteries, bunkers, and observation towers that once scanned the horizon for enemy ships and submarines. The structures feel stark against the dunes, and that contrast, military geometry in a landscape that refuses to hold still, makes the place memorable. Climb one of the old towers, and you'll understand why it mattered. The view takes in the mouth of Delaware Bay, a crucial shipping corridor, and the open Atlantic beyond. Today, those same sightlines are for pelicans, gannets, and migrating raptors riding thermals along the coast. Cape Henlopen is also one of the state's easiest places to build a full day outdoors without repeating yourself. The bike trails thread through forest and alongside wetlands. The beach can be calm on the bay side and energetic on the ocean side, and the seasonal rhythm is dramatic. Spring brings migrating songbirds and the first warm days for cycling. Summer is classic beach season, but early mornings offer quieter sand and better wildlife viewing. Fall is a sweet spot, fewer crowds, steady breezes, and hawk migration overhead. Winter can be surprisingly rewarding for birders, sea ducks and loons offshore, and crisp, open views through the trees. A short drive north from Cape Henlopen brings you to one of the Mid-Atlantic's most celebrated wildlife landscapes, Bombay Hook National Wildlife Refuge. If Cape Henlopen is about meeting the ocean, Bombay Hook is about meeting the tide. This is salt marsh country, flat and wide, where the horizon feels enormous and the air carries the briny scent of mud and Spartina grass. The refuge was established in 1937, part of a growing national effort to protect habitat for migratory birds along the Atlantic Flyway. The marshes here are not empty, they're densely productive. Twice a day, tidal water floods the grasses and then slips back out, moving nutrients, oxygen, and tiny organisms that feed the entire system. Bombay Hook is famous for birds, and it earns the reputation. In spring and fall, migrations can feel like a moving calendar. Shorebirds probing the mudflats, yellowlegs and dowitchers in the shallows, and flocks that lift and settle like smoke. Waterfowl arrive in colder months, snow geese, tundra swans, and ducks in numbers that can make the marsh seem animated. Bring binoculars and a willingness to stop often. A simple driving loop and a handful of trails and observation platforms let you sample different habitats, open pools, brushy edges, and the vast grass-dominated marsh. The best light is often early or late in the day, when low sun reveals texture in the water and makes plumage details pop. There's a deeper story here, too, about how humans have tried to manage and understand marshlands. Dikes and impoundments, common tools in coastal refuges, have been used to shape water levels for wildlife habitat, and they also show how delicate the balance is. Sea level rise, stronger storms, and changing salinity are not abstract concepts in a place like Bombay Hook. They are forces that can redraw habitat over a decade. Visiting with that awareness adds meaning to the experience. You're not only watching birds, you're watching a living system under pressure, and still astonishingly resilient. From Bombay Hook, head south again, following the coast toward the long, bright ribbon of sand that defines Delaware's oceanfront. Delaware Seashore State Park stretches along the barrier island between Rehoboth Bay and Indian River Bay, with the Atlantic on one side and calmer waters on the other. Barrier islands are often described as moving, and here you can see why. Wind pushes dunes inland, inlets open and shift. Storms can carve new cuts and deposit fresh sand. The park's identity comes from this edge-of-the-continent feeling. You're never far from water, and the landscape is always negotiating with it. The Indian River Inlet is the park's dramatic centerpiece. It's a man-made, stabilized opening that connects the bays to the ocean, and it concentrates energy. Currents accelerate, waves steepen, and fish gather where tides funnel bait. Anglers know it as one of the state's prime fishing spots, and even if you don't fish, it's worth lingering to watch the water. On a strong tide, the inlet looks muscular, with rip lines and swirling eddies that make the ocean's physics visible. The bridge overhead frames the scene like an enormous window, and the jetties create perches for seabirds and a front-row seat for sunrise. Delaware Seashore also offers a quieter, more intimate side on the bayfront. The bays are nurseries, sheltered waters where young fish and crabs grow, where eelgrass and marsh edges support a web of life. Kayaking or paddleboarding here trades surf noise for the softer soundtrack of wind in reeds and the occasional splash of a feeding fish. If you want a technical detail that changes how you see the place, remember this. The salinity in these bays can fluctuate with rainfall, tides, and inlet flow, and those shifts influence which plants and animals thrive. Coastal ecology is never static. It's a constant negotiation between fresh and salt water. Continue south to Fenwick Island State Park, Delaware's slender southern gateway to the Atlantic. Fenwick is often described as a classic beach park, but it's more interesting when you read it as a protected segment of a barrier island under heavy development pressure. The dunes here matter. They are not decorative hills. They are infrastructure, built by plants and preserved by policy. And they're one reason the island can absorb storms better than it otherwise would. Walk a boardwalk over the dunes, and you'll feel the transition, from the sheltered, sandy backside to the open Atlantic face, where wind and salt rule. Fenwick's location also places you near one of the region's most unusual coastal landmarks, the Fenwick Island Lighthouse, just across the line in the Fenwick area, built in the mid-1800s to guide ships along a dangerous stretch of coast. Lighthouses are romanticized, but their purpose was practical and urgent. This coast has long been busy with shipping, fishing, and storms, and reliable navigation lights saved lives and cargo. Even if you only glimpse the lighthouse from a distance, it adds a human scale to the seascape, a reminder that people have been working, traveling, and sometimes wrecking along these sands for centuries. To make this best of guide truly useful, it helps to treat Delaware's coast as a set of seasonal chapters. Spring is for migration. Bring binoculars to Cape Henlopen's hawkwatch areas and to Bombay Hook's impoundments and mudflats. Summer is for swimming and long beach days, but it's also when early mornings can reveal ghost crabs scuttling at the surf line and pelicans skimming in formation. Fall is ideal for hiking and cycling, cooler temperatures and fewer crowds. And it's a strong season for photography because the light is lower and warmer. Winter belongs to the patient visitor. Stark marsh beauty at Bombay Hook, sea ducks offshore, and the kind of quiet that makes you notice how wind shapes the dunes. A few practical habits will improve almost any visit. Time your wildlife watching to the edges of the day. Sunrise and late afternoon are often best for both animals and light. In marsh country, bring insect repellent in warm months and expect breezes. In beach parks, protect yourself from sun and wind even on cooler days. If you're walking dunes or marsh edges, stay on marked paths. Dune plants are fragile and marsh soils can be deceptively soft. For birding, a spotting scope is a luxury at Bombay Hook, but binoculars are enough to begin, and a simple field guide app can turn a confusing flock into a satisfying ID. One of Delaware's most distinctive coastal spectacles isn't confined to a single park, but it belongs in any nature lover's guide. The horseshoe crab spawning season on Delaware Bay, typically peaking in late spring. On certain nights, especially around high tides, these ancient animals gather in astonishing numbers to lay eggs in the sand. The eggs become fuel for migrating shorebirds, including the red knot, which times its long journey to coincide with this brief, rich food source. It's a reminder that the coast isn't just scenery. It's a critical refueling station in a hemispheric migration system. Taken together, Cape Henlopen, Bombay Hook, Delaware Seashore, and Fenwick Island form a compact portrait of the Atlantic coastal plain, its beauty, its history, and its ecological complexity. You can stand inside a World War II battery and watch ospreys fish the same waters once scanned for submarines. You can drive a marsh road and see thousands of birds using habitat protected nearly a century ago. You can watch tides rush through an inlet engineered to stay open, then paddle into bay waters that still behave like a living estuary. Delaware's gift is that these experiences are close together, easy to reach, and rich in detail. Visit with curiosity, move slowly, and let the state's small scale work in your favor. In Delaware, the distance between a dune and a marsh, between a fort and a flyway, can be measured in minutes, and the stories are all the more vivid because of it.